Hello guys, Uncle Vasil here with another history video about the Soviet secret police, the world-famous KGB. The story of the KGB is the story of how a single security organization shaped the Soviet Union's power, paranoia, and global reach. Emerging from earlier revolutionary secret police forces, it grew into a vast intelligence and surveillance machine that operated both at home and abroad, influencing politics, controlling dissent, and driving Cold War espionage. Let's get started. I hope you enjoy. The KGB was formally created in 1954 as the Soviet Union's Central Security and Intelligence Service, but it didn't emerge out of nowhere. It was built on the foundations of earlier secret police bodies that had existed since the Bolshevik Revolution. Those predecessors began with the Chaika in 1917, an organization designed to crush counter-revolutionary activity, and over the decades it was repeatedly renamed and reorganized as the GPU, OGPU, NKVD, and MGB, each carrying forward the same core mission of protecting the Communist Party's power through surveillance, intelligence gathering, and political repression. By the time the KGB was established, it inherited not only the personnel and institutional structures of these earlier agencies but also their methods, culture, and broad mandate, to act as the state's all-seeing internal watchdog and its primary instrument for foreign espionage. This continuity meant that although the name changed, the KGB represented the culmination of a long lineage of Soviet security organs that had shaped the country's political life since the revolution. The KGB's dual identity as both a foreign intelligence service and a domestic security force meant it operated across every layer of Soviet life, acting as what the leadership called the sword and shield of the Communist Party. It gathered intelligence abroad through its first chief directorate, running spies, stealing political and technological secrets, and conducting active measures designed to influence foreign governments and public opinion. At home, its second and fifth chief directorates focused on counterintelligence, surveillance, and political policing, monitoring citizens, infiltrating dissident groups, and suppressing anything viewed as ideological deviation. This combination of outward-facing espionage and inward-facing control allowed the KGB to protect the state from perceived threats both outside and within, reinforcing the party's authority and shaping the political climate of the Soviet Union for decades. The KGB's internal operations centered on maintaining ideological control across the Soviet Union, and it did this through a vast system of surveillance, political policing, and counterintelligence that touched nearly every aspect of public and private life. It monitored citizens through informant networks, intercepted communications, and kept detailed files on anyone suspected of anti-Soviet thinking, from outspoken dissidents to ordinary people who read banned books or associated with foreigners. Its political police branches targeted writers, scientists, religious groups, and activists, using tactics that ranged from intimidation and job loss to arrests and forced psychiatric confinement. Campaigns against dissent intensified or relaxed depending on the leadership, with harsher crackdowns under Brezhnev and brief periods of relative tolerance under Khrushchev and later Gorbachev, but the underlying mission remained constant: to detect ideological subversion, neutralize perceived threats, and enforce conformity to Communist Party doctrine. This combination of constant monitoring and selective repression created an atmosphere in which many citizens self-censored, knowing the state's security apparatus was always watching. The KGB's foreign operations formed a global intelligence machine that reached deep into the political and military structures of the United States, Western Europe, and many developing nations, using espionage, covert action, and influence campaigns as tools of state power. Through its first chief directorate, it ran networks of undercover agents, both illegals living under false identities and officers operating from embassies, who stole military technology, penetrated government institutions, and recruited insiders such as members of the Cambridge Five, enabling the USSR to access highly sensitive Western secrets. These efforts extended into Cold War proxy regions, where the KGB supported friendly movements, advised Allied intelligence services, and shaped political outcomes in countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Alongside espionage, it conducted active measures, a broad category that included disinformation campaigns, forged documents, and covert funding of political groups to influence public opinion and weaken Western cohesion. All of this was tightly integrated with its counterintelligence and internal security mission at home, creating a system in which foreign intelligence gathering and domestic suppression reinforced each other, ensuring that external threats were monitored while internal dissent remained contained. The KGB became a powerful political actor inside the Soviet Union because its leaders had access to sensitive information, control over surveillance, and the ability to shape narratives about loyalty and threat within the Communist Party. Senior KGB officials regularly briefed the Politburo, and their assessments could strengthen or undermine particular factions, especially during leadership transitions such as the post-Stalin struggle and later contests involving Khrushchev, Brezhnev, and Andropov. The organization's reach into every ministry and republic gave it leverage in internal disputes, while its monopoly on counterintelligence and monitoring of elites allowed it to expose rivals or protect allies. By influencing what the leadership believed about internal stability, ideological reliability, and foreign threats, the KGB helped define state security policy and often steered decisions on repression, reform, and political appointments. This political weight was reinforced by its broader role in counterintelligence, surveillance, and suppression of dissent, which made it indispensable to any leader seeking to maintain control in a system built on centralized authority and ideological conformity. The KGB was formally dissolved in December 1991, a direct consequence of the Soviet Union's collapse, but its breakup did not erase its influence. Instead, its functions were redistributed into new Russian security bodies that carried forward much of its structure and mindset. The most important successors were the FSB, which took over domestic security and counterintelligence, and the SVR, which assumed responsibility for foreign intelligence, reflecting a reorganization rather than a true dismantling of the old system. These agencies inherited not only personnel and archives but also many of the operational habits such as extensive surveillance, political policing, and counterintelligence practices that had defined the KGB for decades. Even as Russia transitioned into a new political era, the institutional culture of secrecy, centralized control, and suspicion of dissent remained deeply embedded in its security apparatus, shaping how the state approached internal stability and perceived threats. This continuity meant that, although the KGB as an institution ceased to exist, its legacy continued to guide the logic and behavior of Russian security services long after 1991. This is the end of the video, guys. I hope you found it educational. For more history content, please check my channel and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I am counting on you.